Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this, the ultimate dream, a life-changing jackpot. You're handed one of those giant, comical novelty checks, your name is literally front-page news, and in that one single moment, it feels like every financial worry you've ever had is just gone. But there's a bit of a cinematic mystery here. Why does this kind of sudden wealth so rarely actually last? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down the highly surprising, completely research-backed psychology of why sudden wealth fails.
It's a pretty universally held assumption, right? I mean, if millions of dollars were just dropped into your lap tomorrow, you'd be set for life. It permanently solves all your problems, right? Well, if we actually peel back the layers and look at what happens to these winners over time, we start to see a very different and honestly, kind of suspenseful reality unfold.
Get ready for a completely counterintuitive piece of research. Studies tracking lottery winners over time have found this wild, consistent pattern. A notable, meaningful share of these massive jackpot winners end up in severe financial distress within just a few years. Actually, they hit financial hardship at rates comparable to, or sometimes even exceeding, the general population. I know, it sounds crazy. Despite starting from a drastically better position, the sheer amount of money just doesn't reliably prevent them from going broke, which naturally begs the question, why?
And this brilliantly illustrates the first mechanism behind this paradox. Sudden wealth completely short-circuits how normal wealth building works. Normally it's gradual. You get a raise, you save a little bit more, you learn how to budget and invest, your spending habits and your financial literacy sort of develop alongside your rising income over an entire lifetime. But sudden wealth, it totally bypasses all of that. A lottery win compresses a lifetime's worth of major financial decisions into an extremely short window. You get the millions all at once, with absolutely none of the gradual learning curve that usually comes with building wealth. You are literally thrown straight into the deep end.
Because there's no learning curve, the spending baseline just completely resets, almost immediately. Think about it for a second. You get the windfall, right? You buy a massive new house, a luxury car, you're showering your family with gifts. Suddenly, your idea of a casual Tuesday coffee run involves valet parking and a tip. You establish a drastically expensive baseline normal way before you've built any sort of sustainable long-term financial structure to actually support it.
See, the drain on the bank account isn't just coming from buying fancy cars. When you hit a windfall, you don't just get money. You get a sudden, dramatic, and intense increase in requests for cash from family, friends, and even distant acquaintances you haven't spoken to in years. Financial counselors point out that refusing these requests carries a massive, genuine emotional toll. It's an intense, unspoken social pressure that almost no one ever prepares for. Many winners report giving away or lending huge sums of cash simply because they desperately want to preserve those important relationships and avoid the guilt. It is an entirely hidden cost of winning.
Is it really about the money itself? We've talked about this reckless spending baseline and giving it all away under intense social pressure, so you might naturally assume that the sheer volume of cash is the actual root of the problem. That having too much money is, just a curse in disguise.
But actually, it isn't. Not every large windfall ends in disaster. Research specifically suggests that the money itself is rarely the determining factor for failure. The real key to success is the preparation and the structure established immediately after the win. Winners who set up a solid framework right out of the gate report considerably better outcomes in follow-up research. It's an incredible revelation, honestly. It's not about how much you win. It is entirely about what you build around it.
So what does that structure actually look like in the real world? Well, here's the blueprint. This is basically the antidote to those psychological and social traps we just talked about. It really comes down to 3 foundational steps. Step 1 is a deliberate waiting period. Step 2 is a pre-decided giving structure, and Step 3 is hiring a fee-based advisor. Let's break these down to see exactly why they're so unbelievably vital.
All right, Step 1 is the pause. Financial advisors who specialize in sudden wealth universally recommend parking your funds in a low-risk account for 6 to 12 months before doing anything. That is a full half year to a year where you make absolutely zero major lifestyle changes. No mansions, no supercars, nothing. And here's exactly why experts treat that waiting period as essentially non-negotiable. Decisions made in the first few months tend to be the absolute most costly. The initial windfall brings this intense emotional high. You're euphoric, you're overwhelmed, and you're incredibly prone to making impulsive choices. This deliberate pause forces you to cool down. It physically protects you from your own emotional intensity so you can make rational, calculated choices later on when all that hype finally fades. Now, Step 2 directly tackles that terrible hidden social pressure we discussed earlier. You absolutely must establish a fixed giving budget in advance.
By calmly deciding on a strict giving structure before anyone even asks you for a dime, you completely remove the in-the-moment emotional pressure. You avoid making agonizing, case-by-case decisions every single time a family member asks for a loan. The plan is already set, the budget is fixed, and you can just point to the structure rather than taking on that heavy emotional burden yourself. It's a real game changer.
And finally, step 3. Who do you actually trust to help you navigate all this? You must hire a fee-based advisor, not a commission-based one. See, a commission-based advisor has a direct financial incentive to sell you specific products, which might not actually be what you need at all. A fee-based advisor, on the other hand, charges a flat rate or a percentage, meaning their advice is completely objective and entirely aligned with your long-term interests. Getting that early, objective advice is an absolute necessity if you want the money to last.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, I didn't win a massive jackpot today, so how does this apply to me? The honest truth is that sudden wealth doesn't fail because the winners are foolish or careless. It fails because an entire lifetime of financial decisions gets compressed into a short window without structure, without pacing, and without a way to handle intense pressure. And this is profoundly true for all of us, no matter our income bracket. Money problems are rarely just about the sheer amount of cash you have. They're entirely about how you structure your finances, how you pace your lifestyle choices, and how you manage the social and emotional pressure surrounding your decisions. The lottery just magnifies these everyday forces into a much shorter, much more visible timeline. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If you won a large sum tomorrow, knowing everything we just went over today about the psychological traps, the lifestyle creep, and the massive emotional pressure, what is the very first thing you would actually do? Let that sink in, and use these lessons to protect and structure whatever wealth you build in your own life.